Welcome and thanks for coming. This is the first of the Somerset Green Open Homes live webinars. Firstly, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Matt. I am the project officer for the Somerset Retrofit Accelerator project, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. I just want to introduce Jacob. Jacob, if you want to say who you are.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jacob Hall. I'm the Climate Change Officer at Mendip District Council, so working alongside Matt and Cara on this call and a number of others on the Retrofit Accelerator project as well.
And Jacob, you'll be, if it's okay, sort of monitoring the chat on the call, and if I can't see new people joining, which it sounds like people are, and I can't see it at the moment. If it's okay for you to let people in, that'd be fantastic.
Yep, no problem.
Cara, you're welcome to. I know you're sort of attending, but you're welcome to introduce yourself as well.
Thanks, Matt. My name is Cara Naden. I'm an environment specialist for South Somerset District Council, one of the partners in the Retrofit Accelerator project, helping to decarbonise everyone and support homes to reduce their energy and find renewable energy solutions and live happy lives.
Thank you. And we also have George from the Centre for Sustainable Energy. George, do you want to just, well, you can briefly introduce yourself, but you're going to do a little presentation for us in a moment anyway. So,
yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, my name's George. I'm a retrofit assessor, and I work for a charity called the Centre for Sustainable Energy, and we have a project called Future Proof, which I'm going to introduce in a bit.
Wicked, thank you. And then we have Sarah and Richard. If you can just, if you want to say hello, make sure you're still here. And we also will then speak to Juliet later on. I think she's out putting, doing the bedtime routine for her 3-year-old at the moment. So just a couple of sort of housekeeping notes. I guess a lot of people are used to this now, but we are recording this. So if you don't want to be filmed, please turn your camera off. Great if you generally can mute yourself unless you're asking questions. The reason why we're recording it is that we will be uploading it onto our sort of YouTube playlist. So hopefully more people that weren't able to come today will be able to access it in the future. And then we'll talk a little bit about it in a moment. We're also creating a website, and we'll want to sort of embed the videos and the webinars into that as well, so more people can access it. And a note about, I just put about questions. So there's not too many people on the call now. It probably would be okay if you just wanted to ask a question, but if we can try and use the chat function, and then Jacob can kind of filter and answer some of those questions. And then we will have sort of designated times to ask questions after each homeowner chat as well. All right. So the Somerset Retrofit Accelerator, as you may have gathered, if you didn't already know, it is a partnership between all the district councils in Somerset, along with some of the town councils, as well as Somerset Independence Plus and the Centre for Sustainable Energy. And it's a project funded by the UK government through the Community Renewal Fund. I think it's important just to ask a question: what is retrofit? A simple explanation is just to say that it refers to any improvement work on an existing building to improve its energy efficiency, making them easier to heat, able to retain the heat for longer, and replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy. It's quite, for some people, it's quite a new term, and so I think it's worth just mentioning that now. Obviously, George is going to explain a little bit more in a moment. So what is the Retrofit Accelerator project? There's 4 strands of it. The first one George will talk about, which is future-proof, and the retrofit plans for Somerset households. Basically, there are 50 discounted plans. There are, I believe, still some available, and George will talk about that. And that's really just to help households on their retrofit journey to look at what measures their home requires, and looking in depth into the use of the house. It takes into consideration a lot of different things, basically. So George will talk a bit more about that. The second aspect is actually looking at the supply chain and the lack of sort of skills in Somerset area. So to try and address that, there is a future-proof essentials course, which there are 30 fully funded places for local contractors. The third aspect is what this event is about, which is the Green Open Homes. So showcasing what people have done in Somerset already, sharing their knowledge and their experience. And as I say, that they will then be recorded for use, along with some case studies on the website. And then finally, something which hopefully will be one of the sort of legacies of the project will be a green directory as part of a website, which then hopefully will help people on their journey. Once they know what they need to do, they'll hopefully be able to find products and services, contractors locally to then carry out those works. George, if you want to go ahead, if you let me know when to move on.
Sure thing. Thank you. Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know some of that, because obviously I'm just doing my part. As I said, yeah, I'm a retrofit assessor. So yeah, I visit properties and do assessments, and that involves the kind of home retrofit plans that we do through Futureproof, which we'll be talking about. So yeah, that's great. So yeah, basically Futureproof is a project that's for people that basically homeowners who are looking to make improvements to their home and kind of have a budget for that. So kind of would be in the able to pay market, basically. And yeah, obviously it's run by us at the Centre for Sustainable Energy. So it aims to provide a service, yeah, basically to kind of various stages along their the retrofit journey there. And primarily what we look at really is thermal energy efficiency, so insulation really, low carbon heating as well, and then also things like microgeneration, which would be your solar panels and solar thermal systems and things like that. As it says there, it was originally set up with funding from BEIS, which is the Department for Business and Industrial Strategy there, but now it kind of continues on after that funding. So, yeah, slide please. So yeah, just kind of starting with kind of a bit of a big picture, really. So obviously, as you may know, we have the government has the net zero targets. So basically, that's kind of on many fronts. We're trying to address the carbon dioxide that we produce. The greenhouse gases, which have been shown to be causing climate change, etc. So how that relates to housing, just some statistics here. 14% of the total emissions from the UK can be kind of assigned to domestic household use. So that includes your electricity consumption, space and water heating, basically. Just a fact there that's basically equivalent to kind of emissions from all of UK aviation and waste combined. So obviously quite significant amount. And in terms of kind of how we compare to Europe, so the situation we have in the UK is that 45% of our existing dwellings are rated as a D band or below on the EPC. So EPC is the Energy Performance Certificate. Obviously, there's a rating system there from A being the most efficient homes down to G. So 45% of our homes are in the D band actually, and then 19% are E or lower. So yeah, and then approximately 80% of all buildings that will be in use in 2050 are already built. So it's clear that the energy efficiency of our current buildings needs to be improved drastically in order to meet the net zero target by 2050. So that's why we're kind of focusing on retrofit, really. Yeah, we can go to the next one then, please. Oh, sorry, I didn't really point out that picture, did I? That just kind of shows the kind of different housing elements there, and kind of how it breaks down. So yeah, I mean, obviously it would depend on the dwelling, but you know, obviously it's kind of most of it is through the walls, because that's kind of most of the dwelling is walls. Some people are surprised by kind of the amount that's lost through the windows is less, and that's mostly because the windows are just a smaller part of the overall fabric, basically. Although they do have more thermal transfer than, let's say, in a wall or whatever. There's just less of them. I believe the 15% coming out of the door there is infiltration. So basically that's drafts, coming in through the skirting boards, around pipe work, through the doors, any kind of broken seals on windows. Heat is lost through the floor at kind of a lower rate, because obviously the ground is more stable. Most of it from the kind of perimeter of the house. So that's why things like perimeter insulation can be really good. It's kind of a barrier against the side of the house. And then, as we all know, with loft insulation, quite a lot of heat goes through the roof, and that would be more, if it was a bungalow, because a higher percentage, basically. Sure. So just breaking that one down there. So yeah, as Matt said there, retrofit means basically installing measures to existing dwellings to kind of improve their performance, basically, and thermally, and to reduce their, well, I mean, it can mean different things, and an EPC score is like a combination of things, really, because on the one hand it's the carbon, on the other hand it's the comfort, and on the third hand it's cost and the actual kind of amount of energy that a property uses overall. So basically retrofit can be improving any or all of those things, really. Ultimately, in this case, with the goal of reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, the term that's used a lot is a whole house approach, basically. So basically, proposed interventions there are considered together with the building's context, so kind of its age, the things that are around it, the weather, the elevation, lots of different factors. It's basically, any one thing you do to a property can affect it somewhere else. So it's been called like a joined up approach, and not just kind of focusing on individual measures and kind of focusing on what effect they have on the property. But yeah, thinking about the whole dwelling in its context and the interaction between different measures you can do to a property. And if we go on again. But yeah, really, what that looks like is it always starts with maintenance. So we have an advice line at the Centre for Sustainable Energy. So we get kind of anyone can call us up and ask us questions. And quite often personally, I've heard people kind of saying, oh, I have a damp problem, so I want to get this grant to kind of insulate my walls to stop that. But that's not a good idea really at all. In many cases, it's complicated the way that insulation and damp interact with each other. So basically you want to be retrofitting a healthy house, so that's your maintenance, make sure your rainwater goods, your guttering is intact, and kind of your walls and all of that stuff, basically. And then basically thinking about the best order in which to do things. So the example there would be if you're thinking about external wall insulation, but you also need to replace your windows, let's say you have very poor single glazing or whatever it is, you know, it wouldn't really make sense to do the external cladding, the external wall insulation first, because obviously there's going to be a lot of detailing around the windows. So then when you come to replace your windows, you might be damaging, you know, that expensive measure that you've already done there. So thinking about the best way to do things. And the vast majority of kind of building defects are caused by moisture. Obviously, buildings essentially are designed to deal with moisture, so we have to put lots of thought into that. And you know, it depends a lot about, you know, whether it's a traditional building, and we use terms like vapor open, vapor permeability, kind of traditional build materials such as stone and wood and things like that. Basically, another way to think about it is they tend to like breathe, so moisture can pass through them. Whereas modern buildings and kind of modern insulation materials are impermeable, so we need to control moisture more through ventilation and things like that. So considering those factors really. And finally, there, just on the slide, obviously we've got the heritage issues. So your house might be in a conservation area or protected in some way. So you might have to get permission to do certain things. And kind of, yeah, further to that, we have what we call the hierarchy. So basically what we have at the top there is energy conservation. So at CSE, like I said, we have an advice line. So in Somerset, that's called Safe and Warm Somerset. So, you know, anyone can call our line and talk about, you know, things, and we might say, oh, have you defrosted your freezer? Do you boil too much water in the kettle? Do you close your curtains at night time? You know, have you balanced your TRVs on your radiators? You know, have you done any draft proofing? You know, all that kind of behavioral stuff that we can do to save energy around the home is always the first place to start. Because as efficient as a home is, it really depends on how people are using the property that can make such a big difference to the amount of energy we use. Then the energy efficiency is going to be really the insulation, really, which we call the fabric measures. So basically making the property you know, more thermally efficient. So kind of when you're heating it, which is obviously where most of our energy goes, is on heating and hot water, you know, less of that is escaping. So that's, yeah, the fabric first approach, as it's often called. I think there's a slogan there, which is basically, do I have it written down somewhere? Anyway, yeah. And then finally, kind of the renewable energy. So that would be like things like heat pumps, which kind of use heat in the environment, which is obviously a sustainable resource, and solar panels, which use the sun, you know, for energy, which is a sustainable resource. So that would be the last step. There would be generation, and then obviously future-proof as the project kind of advises on, you know, these steps and kind of what makes sense to do first. We can go on to the next slide again. So the services that we provide. So we have the introductory guide, which goes through all the basic principles of retrofit to start your journey. One of the advisors can go through a telephone consultation and talk about different measures that may be appropriate. And then there'll be a summary which is sent out in a text format, a document that kind of summarizes all that advice and kind of goes into the measures that were talked about. The full survey and retrofit plan is what I do. So that involves a site visit, take lots of measurements, you know, basically spend a couple of hours at the property, yeah, just gathering lots of information, and then we would use that to make kind of a model of the property, kind of all the different elements of it, and then kind of create different scenarios, kind of you know, different plans, kind of in what order you could do things, kind of starting from maybe the smaller things and the more inexpensive things, and ultimately kind of working up to kind of a kind of deep retrofit. It'll give you an idea of cost, and then kind of it will show on the model the impact that will have on your property to energy and carbon and cost and all of that stuff. And then at the end of it, you get a report which kind of goes through all that stuff in detail for you, and you know, might be a good place to start. Other services going on from there would be yeah, so the planning appeal service. So if you have applied for planning permission, and you've been refused, then you can get advice from us on that as well, and when to appeal those decisions. And we have expert planning consultants based at CSE. The project management service is more about coordinating contractors and kind of once the project is underway, doing that. And then the on-site inspection as well is available. A qualified coordinator can inspect the installation there and sign that off. So yeah, if anyone purchases these services, they can have access to the future-proof associated builders list as well, which kind of a list of contractors there. Sorry, Matt. Sorry, I haven't really planned this presentation very much. How's that for time so far? Am I going on too long already? Or
I can't even see the time actually, but I think it's all really relevant. I guess I just wanted to mention. I mean, maybe we should sort of finish it around there, but in terms of the future-proof, the retrofit plans, I'm just trying to remember what the discounted costs are. Is it something like £50 for the guide?
Yeah, so
£100 possibly for the full retrofit plan.
Yeah, so basically all that info is on the website there, and I was updated just before the presentation today that I think we have 15 or 20 of the discounted plans in Somerset left. So at the moment, if you go on the website and you do click on Somerset, that's the price that will come up. So basically, yeah, if you say you're in Somerset and you go on the Future-Proof website, until those 15 or 20 plans have been requested, then you'll be able to see the discounted prices on there. Yeah, there was that slide which is just about the different schemes that are available. I don't know how familiar everyone is with these. Bust is a new scheme that's for basically it's a heat pump one. It's like a set 5 or 6K basically for a heat pump installation, which is available to pretty much anyone. There's not much criteria there unless you have cavity walls that are uninsulated or you have your loft uninsulated. The HUG scheme is for off-gas properties, and that one, your property has to be below a D band and also income threshold on that one of 30K. Eco is more for kind of fuel poor households, and Somerset and the different areas will have different eligibility, like how they define fuel poverty and things like that, or if you're in receipt of a benefit, and you can get through Eco 4, which has just begun, they're starting to do solid wall insulation. You can get cavity wall insulation fully funded, loft insulation, some heating systems and HUGs is like all the measures, so that includes solar panels, it includes external wall insulation, floor insulation. So yeah, I mean, you can always contact us about what grants are available. And then yeah, maybe if we just go straight to the last slide then, because I think all our details are on that one about how to contact us. Yeah.
Is this the last one?
That's the last one, yeah. So it just says the areas that Future-Proof cover. It's got our email address and phone number, and the website as well. I think the only slide we skipped there was just about how to find contractors. So I think we just pointed there to the NIA, National Insulation Association. They have a website. You can find installation installers. MCS is the certification scheme that you probably want to go through if you're getting solar panels or anything, because if you don't have the MCS certification, you won't be able to get things like the the tariffs. Like, it's not the feed-in tariff anymore, but things like the smart export guarantee, and those guys are also accredited, and if they do bad measures, then they're going to lose their accreditation. There's also Trustmark as well, which isn't in the presentation, but that's another one to look out for.
Cool. Thank you so much, George. I think that's really useful. I hope everyone else thinks so too. I think we should move on because time, it's hard to predict how long things will take, but it's 7:30 now, so I think Sarah, Richard, if you're there, we can start start with you.
Righto.
So I'll play your first video. Fingers crossed.
Hello, I'm Richard. We're going to show you what we've been doing to make our house more energy efficient.
Hello, I'm Sarah. We moved here 3 years ago. It's a detached 3-bedroom house built in 1970. It looked very smart when we bought it because of the redecorating that had been done, and it had cavity wall insulation, but the windows, radiators, doors and so on were all in need of updating. Our motivation was the climate crisis, and our reward that we were more comfortable and our bills are low. In our previous house, we put in double glazing, insulation, PV panels and air source heat pump, and we wanted to do the same again here. It's really rewarding. We were lucky we were able to have the work done before we moved in. The result is we generated more than 4,000 kilowatt hours of our own electricity last year, which is really pleasing. And we import only 30% of the kilowatt hours of the average household's total energy use. So we're really chuffed with that. And that includes the charging of our e-car. With hindsight, we'd have done more research to be sure we were getting what we needed and not what the traders have. But overall, we're very pleased with what we've got.
I had a question. You mentioned about doing various works to your previous property, and I wondered how similar that property was to your current property.
It was actually very different. It was built in the 1830s with thick stone walls. It was a little Victorian cottage. And when we moved in there was no central heating at all. So we immediately put in an air source heat pump and also photovoltaic panels, because we'd save some money going for a cheaper house. And then we gradually added really good double glazing as we went on and had the money for it.
Thank you. Jacob, I can't see if there's any anyone with any questions through the chat or anything. Shall I just carry on, because we will have a section at the end for questions.
Yeah, I think that's good. If you go through the videos and the slides, and then I'll compile the questions if there are any. There's none at the moment, and then we can go through those at the end.
Brilliant, thank you. Right, so next one, looking at insulation.
Welcome to our loft. Not a statement I'd often thought I'd make. When we bought the house, it had loft insulation of the traditional kind, but we wanted somewhere where you could store stuff and get at it easily. So we wanted boards. So what we did was to take the old loft insulation out and have insulation board fitted, which was below the rafters level, so we could have boarding on top. There's just about one corner where you can see some of it, so I'll try and show you what it looks like. Here you can see just about what we did. There's the rafters running along the picture, and then on the left the boarding, and you can just see beneath it some of the insulation board. The insulation board we've got is 8 centimetres thick. The chipboard boarding on top 2 centimetres, which seems to work very well in terms of insulation.
Here's one of our new doors and some of our new windows, and we're really pleased with them. I think they look very nice. They've had 4 winters now and still look as good as new, so that's absolutely brilliant. We chose not to put vents in, and they're pleased about that. You can lock the windows just slightly ajar and get some ventilation that way if need be. Last winter we borrowed a thermal imaging camera from the district council, and that showed that the windows were working really well. So we're incredibly pleased with them.
So I mean, there's a couple of things. Firstly, just before we talk about the thermal imaging, you know, you've improved the insulation of the fabric of the building, and you with new windows, new double glazed windows, with choosing especially not to include any the vents. I was wondering if you had, especially having the cavity wall insulation as well, if you have had any problems with dampness, condensation, or mold. Either that, I guess you wouldn't have experienced it before the works because you hadn't moved into the property, but yeah, just wondering if you had experienced anything like that.
No, and there was no sign of anything like that when we moved in. We did, because we had it at our old property, bring a dehumidifier with us, but when it broke down last winter, we realised it wasn't actually doing anything particularly significant. We've not had any problems with damp or mould. I actually did ring the Centre for Sustainable Energy to say, how do we know if we've got enough cavity wall insulation and whether it's doing the trick? And they said, well, you would have damp problems if it wasn't. So, and then basically, if we're boiling, you know, cooking a lot of stuff in the kitchen, we might open the window a bit, not very often though. And if we've had a shower, we open the bathroom window for a few minutes. And then if there's a cold night, we'll just sponge up. You know, usually, if it's very cold, a little bit of condensation at the bottom of the windows.
Cool, thank you. And then, yeah, the thermal imaging. Are you able to explain what we're looking at here? It just, I don't know if you've seen the film, but it reminds me of what the Predator looks at.
In layman's terms, what you're seeing is where it's looking white is the hottest, and then through yellow and sort of orange to purple and black. So the walls look as though they're quite warm there. It was a week where it was sunny during the day, so there's probably a bit of sort of like storage heater effect with the walls. I don't know, but you can see the doors and windows are doing a really good job. So yes, I mean, that was why I asked the Centre for Sustainable Energy about the cavity wall, because I wasn't sure. But, yeah.
And where did you get the thermal imaging camera?
South Somerset District Council had one on loan last winter, so we had it for a week in the village and flashed it around various properties and did our own. So I think, yeah, it's, I don't know how well we're interpreting the results, but it seems to be okay.
Yeah, fantastic, thank you. Okay, so now we're sort of the property is conserving the warmth. Now we're looking at sort of generating that heat.
This is the internal part of the heat pump, control panel below and clever electronics above, and then there's a certain amount of pipe work involved. Though we put it in the garage because it suited us and the heat pump's just outside, but they can be more compact than this. We've also got the hot water tank in here. The house previously had a combi boiler, so there wasn't a water tank indoors, and rather than disrupt the house, we put it out here in the garage. This is the outside unit of our air source heat pump. Just sits on a plinth on the ground. There's no groundworks involved at all. You may hear sometimes that air heat pumps can be a bit noisy. Well, we've got a lovely sunny day today, so it's not working, but earlier we did a rehearsal with this and it's virtually silent. So that's not a concern. Perhaps some of the early ones may be, but not now. We'd already replaced the old 1970s radiators in the house, and when we installed the heat pump, we decided we'd see if they work fine with those radiators, and it does. Our bills are partly low because we're quite happy to keep the house at a relatively low temperature constantly, day and night, and if needs be, we just put on a bit of extra clothing sort of in the depths of winter. But when we've had guests and we've put the heating up, the existing radiators have coped absolutely fine. This is the
So the questions I had, obviously, yeah. So you didn't, when you installed the heat pump, you didn't add any additional radiators or increase the size of them. I wondered if your contractors advised you whether you should have done or not, if that makes sense.
Yes, we discussed it with them, and because the way we use the house, you made the point earlier about how people use the house. We go on the person, not the property approach. So we keep the background level reasonably low, and they said, well, try it and see, that rather than go to the expense of and disruption of putting in larger radiators, use the existing ones, which are modern and pretty efficient, and see if it works and come back to us if it didn't. In our previous property, when we went from scratch, we did have larger radiators installed for the heat pump, but we've not found any problems at all using these ones. So if you have modern, reasonably effective radiators, you might well find you don't have to replace them. The only issue was that because that in order to get the grants which are then available, I don't know what the position is now, but we wouldn't have qualified for the grant because we wouldn't have reached the accreditation because the radiators weren't big enough for the system. But we were happy to forego the grant in order to avoid the expense and disruption of replacing the radiators. And waste.
Yeah, and you find that the system works for you, but most importantly.
Yeah. Yes, the key thing is keeping it at a steady temperature. It's not like a gas boiler or whatever where you tend to raise and lower the temperature. We found this in our previous property, and certainly here, we keep it on the same level day and night, and that's the most efficient way of using it.
Yes, you certainly can't sort of decide to have it off all night and then expect it to get up to temperature within, you know, a short space of time, because it's a lower hot water temperature in the radiators than fossil fuel ones. Not that much lower, but appreciably lower. Yeah.
And did you consider any other options in terms of heating the property?
Not really. We'd had experience of air source heat pump and liked it. And so that was always our preferred option. We've got a sort of efficient modern wood burning stove as a backup should anything go horribly wrong. But no, we didn't look at other systems. Very briefly at ground source, but that took about 2 minutes because they looked at the amount of ground we've got and said no, not really practical. So air source it was, and that works fine for us.
And in terms of the old property, which is quite different, as you mentioned before, has your experience of the heat pump there been any different? Did you find that it worked for that older property?
Yes, it worked fine, absolutely fine. And when we were there, I think we probably had it warmer than we do here. I think we had it 18 when we were there, and we're down to 16 here, and it worked absolutely fine. I suppose if we have people around for a meal, we'd put it up higher than that. And it worked beautifully.
Yes, we had wood burning stoves in the living room and dining room. So if we had people in, we tended to use that to heat that space because the solid stone walls weren't terribly efficient. So that if you wanted to run warm, you heated that room with the wood burner to sort of make it a bit more comfortable.
Can I just add to that? Because it certainly did do it with the heat pump. It's just then we did use the wood burning stove, and it's always rather cosy and fun. Whereas having learned a bit about air pollution, we don't use it here.
Cool, thank you. I imagine that someone might want to ask this question, and it's not we've not pre-arranged this question, but I wondered if you can let us know how much the system cost. want to know that. And obviously it may be a bit different now, but
the overall cost was just over 13,000 or 15,000 rather, using the existing radiators. So if you had to put in new radiators, that would obviously come up a bit, but 15,000 was what it cost us. That was not, and there was, as I said before, there was no, we didn't have any grant elements. So.
And what was the size of the heat pump? I'm not sure if it was.
I'm not really sure, in a sense, what it means. It's an 11 kilowatt unit,
yeah.
But beyond that, the sort of technical, we've got the technical details, but don't understand them, I think.
Yeah, I know the feeling. Cool. Okay. We'll move on now to generating your own electricity. So looking at your solar photovoltaics.
You can see our 18 photovoltaic panels here, and we've got a battery installed as well, which we'll show you in a moment. We enjoyed it so much at our previous house, using the electricity we generated and knowing we were contributing to the grid, that we got these installed straight away here. We didn't realise when we had them installed that you don't automatically be able to use the battery when there's a power cut, so that's something we do need to address. The specs for the system, and I don't really understand what they mean, are 5.4 kWp solar system, inverter is 3.6 kilowatts, and the battery is 7.42 kilowatts. And now we'll go inside and I'll show you the meter and the inverter and battery. Here's the meter in a cupboard, and below it there's the isolator switch. So now we're up in the loft, as you can see, and this is our inverter that converts the direct current to alternating current ready for use. This is our battery down here, the batteries, and then there are more isolator switches here, and isolator strings, and we don't really know all about that. You can see it needs inspecting after 3 years, so perhaps we'll find out a bit more.
I think for the benefit of myself and maybe some other people, it'd be interesting to know if you can explain, and maybe using possibly using the solar monitoring system images that we have here, how it all interacts with the solar and the battery and the grid.
Okay, so the top circle is the panels on the roof, and the little figure you can see underneath the symbol for the panels is how much they were generating at the moment that screenshot was taken. Then the diagram has little yellow dots going down showing us what's happening to the electricity. So you can see that some is being fed into the circle down on the bottom left, the feed-in power. So 717 watts of that 747 was going into the grid, and 104 watts were going into whatever we were using at the time. I'm not sure what that was. It was probably the fridge. You can see little yellow dots going down from the PV down to the load power, and it was also topping up the battery. So first thing in the morning, if we've used a lot of battery overnight, which we don't really do in the summer, then the panels will top up the battery first. Obviously really before putting any into the grid. Then if we are drawing a lot of power, say we're charging the car or the heat pumps whizzing away, then the battery won't do all the power, even if there's still quite a lot in the battery. It will do quite a bit of it, but we'll take whatever's coming from the panels, and there will also be some feed-in from the grid. I think it's just the way that batteries work. You can't drain them really fast, but it certainly works very efficiently. And yeah.
Thank you. And you mentioned that this was a cloudy day. Is that right? When you took?
Oh yeah. Yes.
So I guess because it's what 5 point something kilowatt peak. So in theory, the amount that it could be coming in could be up to like 5,000 watts, I guess.
Yeah, well, this is where I don't quite understand how it works. So I think on a really sunny day, and you actually don't want a hot sunny day, the best is a cool, really sunny day. It can be a good 3 kilowatt hours that it's doing. but it not the 5, and I'm not quite sure why that is. Again, we've got lots of questions to ask, and we have somebody come to service it, but I think they're busy installing new ones everywhere.
Cool, thank you. So, I mean, my other question, but I think we know the answer that you do. You obviously, or at least the system keeps a history. You do keep records of your usage and generation.
Yes. When we first had it installed, I was taking lots and lots of readings, and then I wasn't taking enough readings. So now I make sure that I've got a reading sort of every month, so that we can look and see what our year's usage was and so on.
Cool, thank you. Right, I think we've got to the end of your slides. I just had a couple of questions first. How did you find your contractors, and like how did you choose your products and that kind of thing?
Partly because we'd done at least some of it before, we tended rather to we knew kind of what the big picture was. We essentially looked at the Which Trusted Trader scheme and also looked for people who were local to us as far as possible to sort of cut down journey, carbon use and so on. In hindsight, we should have spent more time about it. I think we were possibly overconfident because we'd done it before and didn't realise the degree to which sort of contractors will sell you what they've got rather than necessarily say actually ours isn't this one, would be better or something else. So I would certainly recommend sort of more shopping around than we did.
And research.
More research and more shopping around to be very clear as to what you want. So the sort of service that Centre for Sustainable Energy is offering is well worth taking up, so that you've got expertise. As I say, we were perhaps a little bit overconfident, thinking, oh, well, we've done this before, so we know about heat pumps and so on. Certainly, the version we've got is that the installation takes up a lot more space than the one we had in our previous property. So again, get advice as to what suits your particular situation, and don't just sort of charge in and do it. I think the trust mark has come along since we did it, so there are a number of schemes now to help people choose, which weren't sort of so readily available 3-4 years ago.
I think we were naive as far as overconfident, weren't we? I mean, we didn't think to ask how much space it was going to take up or how they were going to arrange it in the garage. This came as a bit of a surprise to find it all along one wall.
And the other one we sort of didn't think through, with, as Sarah mentioned in the video, was getting a battery system which we could use to draw power from if there's a power cut, say. And that's something we're going to try and retrofit to the retrofit, so to speak.
Yeah, it makes sense to get that sorted, doesn't it? And my final question is just, would you have any further plans for the property?
Only sort of minor things. Finishing off, sort of improving the curtains around the windows. There's some piping going through, coming through from the garage, which is connected to the house by a passageway, which isn't properly insulated. So it's a few small tweaks, but in terms of major work, no. That looking at it with the solar imaging, there's no sort of crikey, that's a problem. But there are improvements that we can make along the way. But we were lucky to be able to sort of do the whole package on this occasion in a single blast before we moved in. So all the such disruption as there was all out the way, and the aim was to not have to do anything else afterwards.
Yeah. I mean, that's a very good position to be in, I think, isn't it?
I think it's worth mentioning that when windows are replaced, it's astonishingly undisruptive, and you know, you almost don't know it's been done. It doesn't even, you know, the paintwork doesn't get damaged or anything. That both properties we've had it done, and really brilliant.
Yeah, I think my mum, they had to have a window replaced, and it was unbelievable how easy that window came out. I think
it's quite frightening.
If a burglar was actually like in the window industry, they'd probably do quite well.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions? Is there any? I haven't looked in the chat myself.
Yeah, we've got a couple in the chat. So we've got a couple from Tess, who's asked about the heat pump installation cost, which I think you've covered, and also the running cost and how warm the house gets in compared to a conventional gas boiler as well.
Well, we've not tried to put it above 18 here, but I've absolutely no reason to think it would have a problem doing that. And the running costs are really low. I mean, it's a very efficient way of heating your house, because you're basically using the heat from outside and simply running a pump to sort of reverse refrigerate. The heat pump at the other place, I'm sure we had it up above 21 sometimes, and again, no problem.
Brilliant. That's good. Yeah, no, that's hopefully that answers Tess' question. She'd also asked about what was the cost for the battery that you had installed along with your PV panels.
The whole system was just over 8,000. I haven't got to hand how that was split down. That we sort of planned on the battery was always part of the installation.
I think with the Solar Street scheme, that if it's about doubles the cost if you have a battery as well as the panels, but obviously it depends how many panels you have and all the rest of it, but that sort of order. But, materials and costs may have changed differently, I suppose.
Thank you very much. And then we have a question from John asking about cost of retrofit, which is obviously a very difficult question, especially with everything at the moment, but also about what your kind of annual financial saving is that you've made as well.
It's difficult to say what saving we've made. Well, except from the figures of, you know, that we're 30% of a typical property. Typical UK property, so that's a pretty massive saving.
Definitely, yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. The whole lot came to about 55,000. That sort of all those things added together, and again, that we didn't make use of any grants for any of it, so that there would be the opportunity to reduce that if you go down the grant collecting route. We were just very lucky that we were in a position to do it all in a single go, but in the previous place we sort of did it in bite-sized chunks to a certain extent. Obviously, the central heating will have to be done at once, and that worked as well. But we haven't got figures for what the place would have cost before we did all the work, because we didn't live here then, so can't help on that, I'm afraid.
No, that's very helpful, thank you. And I can see Cara's just put a sort of estimation of 7k for a solar PV and battery through Solar Street, so thank you, Cara. That's all the questions we've had in the chat at the moment.
Cool, thanks. Anyone else have any questions? Oh yeah, George.
Hi, yeah, just obviously a number of things there, and I didn't actually get a chance to look at the retrofit journey you guys went on before the presentation. I don't know if this is appropriate, but there was just a couple of things mentioned there that I thought maybe I'd add a caveat to, if that's okay. Just one thing with like noise of heat pumps. Obviously, that was mentioned. I know that they do have kind of like limits for that noise now, which is kind of you know, they've got to a certain decibel limit, but you know, it is a fan running, so you know they do make a noise basically. Just to pop that point in there. They're not kind of silent as such, although you might not be able to hear it inside. And then with the ventilation, obviously with that you kind of made some decisions about that, which is mostly to do with moisture, but just to make a comment also about indoor air quality. You know, if you are insulating a property a lot, you are making it more airtight, and just to bear in mind that pollutants and things can build up in a home. So just to bear that in mind as well as another aspect of ventilation. Oh, and my question was, I don't know if you guys got a solar diverter at all, to kind of, which is a thingy that takes some of your solar power and kind of puts that into your hot water as well, because that's another option you can get once you've got your hot water tank as well.
No, we haven't got one of those. Hadn't heard of one of those, but we don't use a lot of hot water. We've got an electric shower, and we just basically boil the kettle on the induction hob.
Exactly. Yeah, and with the battery, because it's kind of like, especially if you don't have a battery, that can be an alternative kind of a way to store solar power is in your hot water, especially if you have more of a hot water demand.
I'm hoping in the next webinar that we have someone with a what do you call it, solar diverter. I think hers is a Emerson, but yeah, the same sort of thing. So hopefully anyone's interested in that, then we'll get a bit more information then. Right, I'm hoping Juliet is around. Juliet, are you here?
I am here, yes.
Yeah. Hello. Right, I will go back to sharing my screen. How's the bedtime routine today?
Oh, much better, thank you. Yes. We had a dummy run on Monday night, and my 3-year-old was running around in the garden 9 p.m. at night because she wouldn't let Dad put her to bed. So no repeat tonight, which is good. Hopefully it's not 9 o'clock yet.
Sorry, bear with me. Oh, I knew it was going to do this.
This is the internal part of the heat pump, control panel below.
Right. Sorry about that. Right. So Juliet and Ben, also in South Somerset, we'll play your introduction video.
Hi, I'm Juliet. I live here with my husband Ben and our 3-year-old daughter. We bought the property in 2014 and we renovated it in 2015. We wanted to take the environment into consideration as much as possible, and I'm going to show you a few of the environmental features that we fitted. You can see our 18 photovoltaic.
Juliet, do you have any anything to add about your sort of motivations for any of the works that you carried out?
Primarily environmental reasons, but the added benefit of saving money and making the house more comfortable, same as the others, really.
Thank you. Right, let's look at your installation.
When we moved in, cavity wall insulation had already been fitted. We can tell this from the holes in the mortar lines every few feet along. So there's one hole here and another one here. So that's how we knew it had already been fitted. There was also existing glass fibre insulation in the loft, although you can see it's a bit thicker in some areas than in others, and also it doesn't cover the joists, so this probably could be improved. And whilst I'm up here, I'll also show you the pumps for the solar hot water system.
Matthew, I don't know if you've got your mic switched on whilst you're playing those. It seems to be like quite echoey, which it wasn't on the dummy run. Don't know why that might be.
I'm not. I don't think, because I'm sharing my screen, my full screen with audio. I don't think I can take that off, unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Hopefully everyone can hear all right.
Yeah. Apologies if that is the case. A question I had was about your cavity wall installation, which obviously was already done in the property. You've not had any issues with it yourself?
No, it's been perfectly fine. We haven't had any damp issues at all, which I know some people have had problems with damp caused by having cavity wall insulation fitted incorrectly, but ours is all good. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And are you, in terms of the loft insulation, is it something that you're looking at improving?
Yes, I'm not working at the moment, so we're a bit limited on budget right now. But once we start getting some money coming in again, then yeah, we're going to be looking at adding a bit more to the loft.
I mean, it looks like some of it's just been sort of flattened down, I think, from storage, I guess, in that middle bit, from the little bit I could see.
I'm not sure. It's right next to the hatch. I don't know if
yeah,
got moved just to make it easier to get in and out or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Cool. Right, let's get on to your sort of heating of the property.
The original 1970s oil boiler powered our central heating, so we really wanted to replace this with something else. We did look into heat pumps, but with the information that we had available at the time, we felt that we wouldn't be able to improve the insulation in the existing part of the house enough to make a heat pump viable. So instead, we decided to fit a new, more efficient oil boiler and to reduce the demand on that by fitting the solar hot water panels and the wood burner. And I've also registered with a company that is developing and trialling a renewable fuel to replace heating oil. And I'm hoping that that's going to be available in the near future. When we moved in, cavity wall insulation.
I think a lot of people will be wondering the same thing. What can you tell us any more about this fuel, this trial?
Yes, so you can look it up on Future Ready Fuel. So they're using waste fats and oils, and then there's a process where they add hydrogen to them to produce a liquid fuel, which is renewable. Obviously, a bit of a shortage of oil going on at the moment with Ukraine, so I'm not quite sure how that's going to affect it. But they, I had a quick look today. They've been trialing it in 100 households this year, and are actually hoping to make it more widely available from at some point this year. I imagine it's going to take a bit of time to make it widely available, but certainly that's interesting. And then also I did the Centre for Alternative Technology did the zero carbon course that I went on, and they were talking about a synthetic fuel where they take more kind of woody biomass and add hydrogen to that as well. So that would probably be more sustainable in terms of, you know, there's only so much waste fats and oils around, whereas using sort of woody biomass waste from forestry and things would be more sustainable. So that's something else that's being developed as well, because obviously there are a lot of houses around the country that are off grid on heating oil, and looking for alternatives.
Yeah, thank you. That's really interesting. There's a lot of clever people out there doing lots of clever things, and I think that's definitely going to be part of the sort of solutions going forward. Do you think, in terms of the heat pump advice, I can't remember what year it was. Was it 2006?
2015.
15. Yeah. Do you think their advice would be different now in terms of installing a heat pump? With more experience and the technology's changed? I don't know. So
in a similar way to Sarah and Richard, I think we should have maybe asked more questions and done a bit more research and things. I think we were put off having a heat pump a bit by my parents had one and said that it was costing a lot of money to run, but maybe theirs wasn't fitted properly. So this is the tricky thing, isn't it? When you hear a story of something that hasn't gone well, it rather puts you off. And yeah, I do just wonder if we'd if all these schemes that we've been told about earlier existed then, maybe we might have done something differently. Yeah, it's tricky because it's a big investment, and I do slightly regret the choice that we made, maybe, but that we made the best decision that we could at the time. So we fitted the new oil boiler. It is more efficient, and we do reduce the demand on it through using solar hot water and wood burner. So it's better than it was. Yeah.
Yeah, and also every property is different as well. So and how you live in the property is different as well. And I think that these things are very important to consider. Let's move on to your solar hot water.
The front of our house faces west. We have a small area of south-facing roof which we fitted 2 solar hot water panels onto, which you can just about see here. So on sunny days, they provide all of our hot water, and this means that between the wood burner and the solar hot water panels, for much of the year, we don't need our boiler to heat our hot water.
Do you get the RHI payments, renewable heat incentive payments?
So another thing to watch out for. We should have done, and we asked we had a project manager because we were having a big extension done, and so they managed all of that, and we said, is the plumber RHI registered? Yes, he is. And it turned out that he wasn't, and after a lot of chasing, I didn't end up anywhere. So yeah, that was a bit of a shame. I think that was £1,800 or something like that we should have got. So yeah, another top tip: do check that they are registered.
No, it's really good learning, good advice, I think, for everyone. Let's have a look at your wood burning setup.
So this is our wood burner. It made sense for us to get a wood burner because Ben's a gardener and we have access to lots of free firewood. To increase the benefit, we chose one with a back boiler. So at the back of the boiler, at the back of the wood burner, there's like a water jacket, and the water in that is heated up by the fire in the wood burner, and it goes along these pipes up to our hot water tank, and it heats the hot water for us. The cool water comes back down and is reheated and recirculated. So in the winter, we light the fire most evenings, and it provides us with all the hot water that we need for the 3 of us. We did get a thermostatically controlled pump fitted to these pipes, but we were never able to find someone that could set it up to work correctly. And we actually found that if we just turned it off, the water would circulate by itself just through the hot water rising and the cool water coming back down. So he actually didn't need it at all. The other benefit is that we have something called a heat radiator. So once the hot water is up to temperature, then any additional heat that's produced the hot water goes through the pipes, through that wall, to a radiator in our hallway, and that heats the hallway and our stairwell and landing. So those spaces don't have any additional heating. So that's an extra benefit of our wood burner.
I think that radiator is such a great idea, just to be able to capture any sort of surplus heat. I think that's really good. Do you have to buy any wood? You know,
No, we
so you
don't.
get a good supply from Ben.
Yes, we've got a number of years worth of supply of wood in our garden. So yeah, it's really well seasoned. We don't buy any wood in, and it's all wood that customers of his, you know, the trees died, or a branch has fallen off or something like that. So yeah, it's not any trees from forest sort of thing.
And you've got a big wood store, presumably.
We have, yeah, we've got a couple of wood stores. So each bay lasts for a winter, and so it's seasoned within the sort of covered bay for at least 18 months before we use it, and it's all stacked before that, and air drying before that as well. So that's one of the important things, is to make sure that your wood's really dry to reduce the particulates.
Yeah, I mean, I know that from the canal, a lot of bad burning of fires on people's boats. I think a lot of it is down to like foraging wood and it not being seasoned.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there was a study done about wood burners not being so good for the environment, but then I saw a subsequent thing saying that the data in that was flawed, and it was by quite a large margin. I can't remember how much. Yeah. So yes, having sort of said, oh, they're really bad, now the data is showing not as bad as they originally said. So yes, it's still carbon, but it's short cycle carbon, so better than fossil fuels.
Thank you. Let's have a look at your extension.
The fun part. This is the extension that we had added. We chose a timber frame construction with wooden cladding to reduce our use of non-renewable resources, stone, concrete, cement. We were really lucky. One of Ben's customers happened to have a western red cedar tree in their front garden that had grown just too big. It was blocking out all their light, and they wanted it felling. And so it was just at the right time. We said, please, could we have the wood? We had it taken to a sawmill, and they processed it for us. And we've had this lovely western red cedar cladding fitted to our extension, and it's weathering really nicely. In the extension, we chose to have underfloor heating downstairs. So there's a thick layer of Celotex insulation with a screed on top containing the pipes for the heating. We found this to work really well, and it keeps the room at just a lovely, stable, pleasant temperature in the winter. It doesn't feel too hot, it's just really nice. So that works really well. In the walls, there is also a thick layer of Celotex insulation, and the loft is well insulated with glass fibre as well. All of this makes the extension noticeably warmer than the older part of the house. So the insulation is really doing its job well. Throughout most of the downstairs, we chose a bamboo flooring. Although it comes from China, it is FSC registered, So it means it's been grown in a sustainable way. We found it to be really hard wearing, and also it was very easy to fit ourselves. So this is
my question is about the underfloor heating and how it kind of fits into or like works with the heating system in the rest of the house.
Yeah, so the rest of the house has got radiators, and so we have three-way heating control. So one of the programmers does the hot water, one is for the radiators, and one is for the underfloor heating. So that means that we can control the different types of heating separately. So the underfloor heating is on. We actually we don't have it on 24/7. I do turn it off at night because you can hear the boiler cutting in the middle of the night. So I do turn it off at night. But actually, because the thermal mass of the concrete floor is so good, it doesn't really cool down much overnight, and it's fine. And then it just stays on very low during the day. So our thermostat in our kitchen's actually set at 14 degrees. So it doesn't feel that cold, but you only need it set really low. It just clicks on every now and then, heats up a little bit, and that's fine. And then the radiators we just put on for maybe an hour in the morning and a couple of hours in the evening, and that's it.
Cool. And you find obviously that you mentioned that the new part of the extension, then you definitely feel how the insulation in that has really benefited. It feels a lot warmer. Yes, yeah.
It's just stays nicely warm all the time, whereas the older part of the house you definitely feel once the radiators go off, it feels cooler. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's see your and hear your final thoughts.
If we were to do a project like this again, I would definitely do some things differently. I think my top tip would be to look for an architect and or project manager and builder that have the experience in building environmentally friendly buildings and choosing natural materials and things like that. We thought that our architect was really good on the eco stuff, but actually when it came down to it, that they weren't, and I think we could have ended up with a more environmentally friendly house had we chosen differently. So for example, the insulation materials that they used, I would have preferred natural ones. And I think we could have had more in-depth discussions about what we could have done with the existing part of the house to improve the insulation and the air tightness, and done a bit more on that really. So yeah, I think that's my top tip. This is the extension.
And my sort of final question is similar to Sarah and Richard. Like, do you have any further plans for the property?
Yes, we think that at some point we will add PVs. Our thinking when we were doing the project was that we have a renewable energy tariff anyway, so getting PVs is renewable electricity, but we thought that having the solar hot water and the wood burner would be more helpful. We had an open fire before that, so that wasn't great really. So that's why we decided to do it that way round. So at some point we would like to add PVs, and I think just generally need to do some work on the air tightness. There's some space, there's like a void under the stairs that seems to let in all sorts of drafts, and you can feel it coming out under the cupboard door and things. So it only really needs a bit of draft exclusion, I think, and things like that. One of the things that I find tricky is where we've got the wood burner, you've got to have the vent to let the air in, but then when you're not using the wood burner, lets in loads of cold air. So I don't know if anyone's got oh dear. I'm not tired. Pop it. I'm nearly finished. I'm going to be about 5 more minutes and then I'll come upstairs, okay? You want to wave? You want to say hello? Not sure everyone can see you down there. So come and wave, and then I'll come up in 5 minutes, all right? Wave. Say hi, everyone. There we go. Right. I'm going to come up in a few minutes. Okay?
I'll just sit with my gluey stuff.
Okay, that's fine, as long as you're quiet, okay? I'll be out in a few minutes. There we go. Still awake. What's the time? It's not 9 o'clock yet.
Do we have any questions, Jake?
Yeah, we've got a couple. We've got one from Cara. I don't know, Cara, if you wanted to go for it.
Thanks. First of all, lovely garden, Juliet. Your husband's very good. Yeah, I just wondered about not lagging the pipes from your back boiler on the wood burner. Was that on purpose to create some background heat, or did you not think to do that?
I honestly can't remember. I'm not sure. I don't know what sort of materials you can use to lag it when it's just come out of the wood burner, because it's obviously really hot. So you can't use standard sort of pipe insulation. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that. Probably would make sense if there is a material that you can use to lag them to do that, because obviously the main part of the wood burner is heating that room, and then it would mean that more heat is going up to the hot water. But yes, I don't know what sort of material you use to do it, because it's such high temperature.
We've got for our, because I always hold wood burner, but just for the for leaving out through, you can get double skin metal, so where you can get a small section for a little bit where it's very hot just next to the back boiler, and then go for normal lagging, because obviously the heat will reduce as it goes further away. So that might be an option.
Yeah, might look into that. Thank you. Good idea. You said about the HVO fuels. That is what that's what I was talking about. Yeah.
Right. Well, maybe we can talk, because there's quite a few businesses also looking at it for vehicles, but whether there's an opportunity maybe to also get some form of delivery for oil storage might be an interesting thing to talk about as well as an option.
That'd be good.
Thanks, Cara. And we had a question from Jane about three-way controls for heating systems as well. I don't know, Jane, whether you're there, whether you wanted to go into a bit more detail about what you've got at the moment as well.
Hi, yeah, we inherited it. It's sort of in the house when we moved here 5 years ago, and there's underfloor heating in our kitchen, and that's an extension put in by the previous owners. But our heating system, we've actually got a thermal store, so when the boiler's on, it provides heat for the thermal store, and then when the central heating is running, it draws heat from that thermal store, and we get hot water on demand from the thermal store. But there's a thermostat for the underfloor heating in the kitchen, so a separate thermostat, but it's linked to the central heating. So basically it means if you only got central heating on for an hour or two a day, the underfloor heating is only on for an hour or two per day. And I was just wondering about, I would really like to sort that out, but when I've sort of spoken to the plumber, our local plumbers, they just kind of don't really know what to do. Yeah, so that's, I'd like to know, how could we change that? so the kitchen floor's on for longer?
It's a good question. I can see George thinking. I don't know, George, whether from CSE's perspective, whether you've got an idea.
Unfortunately, not. No, it's kind of ringing bells. I was thinking of some things that can be done at the installation stage. I think I was looking at like underfloor heating for heat pumps, and there's something called like actuators that can be individually controlled. An actuator is basically like a thing that you put an electrical signal and it does a thing. So it will like, you can have that for individual parts of your underfloor heating. So you can have controls and control actuators under the floor. But now it's all kind of in and sealed. I'm not sure really, sorry.
I know it's really frustrating because we don't want the central heating running all the time, but it seems to be the only way to get the kitchen floor warm.
Yeah, I can imagine, definitely. Cara, did you want to come in as well?
I just wonder if it was on a slightly separate feed, Jane.
No, I think it's on the central heating system. That's the trouble. Yeah, it would need to have its own feed from the thermal store, I think, for it to be able to be controlled separately.
Yeah, it would need a control valve, I think, wouldn't it, to kind of control the flow to that area.
Yeah,
Might be able to retrofit something. There is. I was trying to rummage around to find his contact details, but I can't right now. There is somebody in Lidford who I met a while ago who seemed a very knowledgeable and passionate heating specialist and plumber. If I can find his contact details, I'll pass them on. It might be worth the conversation if there is anything that can be retrofitted for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because we are planning to do an extension, and so it just would make sense to sort it out when we do that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody. That was useful. No more questions otherwise. Thanks, Matt. I think you're on mute, Matt.
I knew that was going to happen at some point. It's just because there's a lot of peahens making noise, so I didn't know if that was coming through, so I turned my mic off. Now I can't remember what I was saying. No, I do remember. It was just that we suddenly feel like we're a little bit ahead of schedule, which is nice, and it's still light outside. I'm just going to go back to sharing my screen for one final slide.
Oh, I think Richard has got his hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say with air source heat pumps, I wonder sometimes whether they get the bad press because people do try and run them like fossil fuel ones and expect them to be able to, go from a cold house to a warm house in 20 minutes. That's all I wanted to say, really, because it is a very different way of operating with an air source heat pump. It's worth bearing that in mind.
Definitely, I think part of it's education, isn't it? That's certainly what I hear as well. So no, thank you very much for that. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much to Julia and Sarah and Richard and the the team, George and Jacob and Cara as well, for all helping today. What's next? Well, we have, unless you've opted out, you'll be getting at some point soon some sort of email evaluation. If you can fill that in, that'll help us. The next webinar, I believe, is going to be on the 7th of July, and most likely to have a couple of homes from the Mendip area, and hopefully we'll be looking at a few different sort of technologies and things as well. If you've made some changes to your home in terms of retrofitting and you would like to take part in a similar event, then we're still open to this. Please give me an email. What else can you do? Well, if you're thinking about doing your retrofitting journey, then do consider trying to get one of those last discounted retrofit plans from Futureproof. And then in terms of the Somerset Retrofit Accelerator, we're a little bit low profile on social media, but we do have Twitter and we do have Facebook. We will put all the events as Facebook events. And most importantly,
coming soon in a month or so. We will also have a website. As mentioned before, there will be a directory of local businesses that will hopefully, as well as a guide to retrofit, which Jacob has put together. These things will help people sort of understand the basics of retrofit, as well as finding local businesses to help carry out works. So that's the last slide. I'm going to stop sharing